Welcome to Office Hours. I am Steve Drost. With me, as always, is Will Kaplan. Of course, we are both from the Quivr team. What is Quivr? We are the CRM built by financial advisors for financial advisors, and our objective is simple. How can we help you run your business at peak efficiency? Now, each episode, we tackle a couple of cool items that came directly from our users who are doing just that, trying to make their life a little bit easier. Will, we had a pretty unique request from a larger firm this week at Office Hours about email. I'd love to have you set the stage, explain what's going on, what they're trying to accomplish, and ultimately what their solution is going to be.
Yeah, so this was a little bit different in that they've got some sensitive information that the firm is dealing with right now. It's coming through those email conversations, and they didn't want those emails showing up in the system because it's not ready for all of the users yet. And so the issue that they were running into is like, well, our CEO connected his email. Great, followed the instructions, got all that working, awesome. But that's pulling in all of these emails that we don't want anybody to see yet. Like, it's not ready for the team. It's not ready for the larger audience. We need to keep a lid on it. And so the challenge of that is the Salesforce tool that they use, sort of, that Salesforce provides, is kind of like that lowest common denominator. It's going to get the job done, but you're not going to get any of the bells and whistles. You're not going to get those additional customizations of like, just exclude this address, or, I don't want these emails to come in. And so they're sort of struggling with this situation where it's a little bit of all or nothing. Either we connect all the email or we don't connect any of the email. And so they were in this kind of...
So actually this issue, I remember we've talked about it with this person before, like you can exclude a specific email address. So like steve@financialplanningcompany.com, you can exclude that. But the issue with them was the CEO is emailing clients and you want those emails stored. And then they're emailing other people about that sensitive data. And it's like a pick one. Do you want all of the emails to come in or none of the emails to come in? And they originally went with the none until they realized that there was too big of a gap. They had too much data missing. So like, well, this doesn't work.
Yeah. And so that's where, okay, we need a more robust tool. We need a more powerful solution. And so the question is like, well, how do I get that? Right? What are my options here? And that's really one of the places that Quivr can shine, because it's built on an extremely robust platform. We have Salesforce there in the background. And as you well know, Salesforce has the original app store. I think this is a story that not too many people are aware of, but like back in the day of, kind of what I would say like turn of the century tech, app stores weren't really a thing yet. Early 2000s, it didn't exist. And the CEO of Salesforce and the CEO of this other little technology company, oh gosh, what was it called again, Steve? I think it's Apple Computer. Was like, they were having a conversation, and Steve Jobs basically said, hey, like, you should look at this like a way to extend this tool and build out this app store. And not a bad idea. I think they've had some success with that. And so what Salesforce did is they adopted kind of that concept. And this is way before the Apple App Store was out. And I think one of the kind of cool things about this is the sort of the IP there of the App Store was later gifted back to Apple in sort of recognition of the idea. And so that's how Apple got their name for it. But long story short, you've got this place where third-party developers, other people that are sort of creating software can build these things out and then host them through the platform. You can kind of, go to Salesforce's App Store, which is called AppExchange, and find these tools that will extend the functionality of your default Salesforce environment. Back in the days when I was tinkering, there were a couple that I thought, these are just phenomenal. Like, I cannot live without these. They're, the ones that I see people reach for most frequently, there's, some around email, some around document generation. But there's some really cool timeline stuff. There's some duplicate checking stuff. So you can, keep from entering the same contact in your system 10.
I mean, if you have a problem, I did a quick Google search before this, and what's Google's AI called? Gemini gives you the first answer now. It says there's over 9,000 pre-built and customizable apps in the store. And that is also a huge understatement of how many pieces of technology Salesforce works with, because those are apps. But think about all of the things you can do on your phone that aren't apps. So an API integration is not an app. So you have 9,000 companies that have built an app inside of the AppExchange that you can go play with. And then you probably have another couple 100,000 companies that have built connections with Salesforce to do other stuff.
And I think the key piece of this that really is important to just be mindful of is that depending on what you're trying to do, it will either work really, really well with Quiver, or it might take a little bit of like tinkering to get it working perfectly with Quiver. And the reason for that is there's just two sides to this. There is it works with every single version of Salesforce that's out there. And that is typically where you're seeing stuff that's like working with households and contacts and things like that, or it's getting down deeper into something specific that Quiver has that maybe some of these other versions of Salesforce don't. And that could be something like an insurance policy or something like that. So if you're dealing with more of the generic, a contact is a contact is a contact, and an email address is always going to be, something like an email address, then you can be pretty confident that a lot of these are going to work just with Quiver sort of out of the box. Just turn it on and off we go. The nice thing about it also is that much like Apple's App Store, there's a vetting process. So it's not like you can just install something and you have to worry about the security necessarily, because in order to get on the platform, there is an audit process where, are the permissions correct? Is it pulling information back to that developer? Like, in the same way that sort of, Quiver has to go through a bunch of this stuff and we don't have access to your data unless it's specifically granted. These other tools work in very similar ways. And so you can actually be pretty confident that what you're getting has passed some security check marks.
For sure. And then we bring back to this one company, right, that had the email issue that they were facing. And I know about, like, Match My Email is a super common one. I actually use it in my firm. I just like how it captures the emails then versus the out of the box Salesforce version. I don't know, it's not the most expensive thing. It's not free, but whatever. It's worth it for me for a couple $100 a year to get my emails exactly how I want them. And then another user mentioned another one. And then we went to Google and we just Googled Match My Email competitors, and a dozen showed up on the first page. And now that person's able to go, hit up some websites, look at pricing, see what features it has, go do 2 or 3 demos with the ones that they feel are the most likely to accomplish their goal. And then they can install it and get their exact ideal outcome. And then they'll either love it for the next couple of months as they go through this period of, high sensitivity information, or they'll just use it for a bridge. And then in 3 or 6 months, they'll get rid of it and they'll go back to the way Salesforce automatically records emails. But the theme, right, with all of this is kind of like, we can't tell you no, right? Like, I say this often, but we can't tell you no, because if you're having an issue, there's a high probability that there's another Salesforce user somewhere out there that has the same issue. And when the same people have issues, you have, in a capitalistic society, you have people coming in to create solutions to solve those pain points, right? And that is what we have with this, right? So you didn't have to wait. This user doesn't have to wait for Quiver to redesign Salesforce's email exchange, because we're never going to do that. But they also don't have to live with a less than satisfactory outcome for them. But no, it's cool. The Steve Jobs and Salesforce story and Apple story, that's pretty cool. I won't lie, I didn't know about that until you shared that with me. Anything else on this, Will?
Again, I think the big takeaway here is, if there are solutions that you're looking for and you find something that looks interesting in the App Store, feel free to bring it to office hours, submit a ticket, ask us, do you guys know of this particular app? Does it work well with Quiver? Are there things that I should be concerned about? Like, we're happy to answer those type of questions too. That's not to say that we know everything about all of them. I mean, as Steve mentioned, there are a ton of these apps out there that are available, but we can usually get a sense of, yeah, this looks like it'll probably work okay, or you might run into a couple of, bumps along the way with this one.
For sure. No, I agree. But that's a wrap. Good stuff as always. If you're a Quiver user, remember, come join us on Wednesdays for office hours. And to allude, Will, to what you were just saying, the good thing about how niched down Quiver users are, right? Very specific, real financial planners doing real financial planning. That email might have been the situation here. That might have been the first time we've had that specific case, but they are not the first person to want email getting archived and stored differently. So come to office hours, bring these up. More often than not, we can point you in the right direction and help you with your similar item. If you're not a Quiver user, that's okay. Everybody makes mistakes and nobody is perfect. But remember, it's not too late. Schedule a demo, come hang out with me and Will, and see what Quiver in action and see what it can do for you.